Hey, Rob here for Quadratec.com. Today we're checking out the G2 Axle and Gear Core DRS dual rate sway bar, as well as their mini air compressor. As many of you know, the sway bar, or commonly otherwise known as an anti-roll bar on your Jeep, offers many advantages and benefits to the handling characteristics of your Jeep when you're on the road. Of course, it prevents things like excessive body roll, giving you a more confident feeling when you're in the driver's seat and better handling when you're going around turns. Of course, all that changes when you leave the pavement and head out onto the trail, where we want the maximum amount of articulation from our front axle to help us tackle those really difficult obstacles. Well, to do that, you really only have one option, and that's to disconnect that sway bar. To do that, if you have all the factory components in place, it means you're going to be unbolting your factory sway bar end links. Now, if you've installed an aftermarket suspension, a lot of those commonly come with quick style disconnects for your sway bar, and that means you're still going to be pulling things like cotter pins and tying sway bar links up and out of the way. But when you do that, you're going to get impressive amounts of articulation from that front axle. Now, for example, with our Jeep here in the shop today, we went ahead and put it up on the forklift with everything connected, and we saw about 26 3/4 inches to the bottom of our forks. Well, after putting it back down on the ground and completely disconnecting our sway bar and putting it back up in the air, well, that jumped up to an amazing 38 inches to the bottom of the forks. So you can see just what kind of advantage you get when you disconnect your sway bar. Now, of course, this is a heavily, very highly modified Wrangler we have in the studio here today, but you can just see how every Jeep, whether you're stock or modified, can benefit by disconnecting that sway bar. Now, of course, disconnecting your sway bar means that you're manually crawling around under your Jeep and disconnecting things, pulling pins, and let's face it, sometimes that can be a dirty job. Well, that's where the Core DRS comes into play. This is an air-actuated dual-rate sway bar that you can lock and unlock right from the comfort of your driver's seat on demand. So it's got two sets of torsion bars here. We have an outer torsion bar that will provide us very similar characteristic to the factory sway bar found in your Jeep. When you apply air to the motor here, you're going to unlock that, and it's going to utilize the secondary inner lightweight torsion bar, which is going to allow these ends to flex at a much higher rate, giving you that high level of articulation when you're off-road. Now, because this is an air-actuated motor, of course, you're going to need some sort of onboard air setup to supply air to this motor. And to do that, we've got the G2 Mini Air Compressor. This has been designed exactly for this job. It can supply air to things like their line of core front and rear axle lockers, as well as the dual-rate sway bar. We're going to go ahead and get all this installed on our Wrangler, and then we're going to repeat those measurements so we can show you just what kind of gains you can get by locking and unlocking the Core DRS right from your driver's seat. So as you can see, the Core DRS installs really easily using all the factory mounting hardware that we used with the factory sway bar. So once we got our factory sway bar dismounted, we went ahead and we swapped over the isolators and the brackets onto the new Core DRS unit. Then we installed the cross member section with 2 additional bolts to the motor, and then the entire assembly simply installs back onto the frame rails using the factory hardware. Now, once you have this in place, the only thing left to do here is to go ahead and connect our sway bar end links. And this is where, if you have factory sway bar end links, you'll connect those. The great thing about the Core DRS, it's been designed to be used with other end links as well. So like in our case, where we already had a quick disconnect end link in place, well, we simply need to go ahead and adjust these to the correct length, and then we can get these installed. And one other nice feature that you'll see here is actually we have 3 mounting positions for our sway bar end links. And that's going to allow us to fine-tune the stiffness of the Core DRS. So if we utilize the first mounting hole all the way forward, closest to the torsion bar, that's going to give us the stiffest setting. Then we have a medium setting, and finally, all the way farthest towards the back of the vehicle, farthest away from our torsion bar, that's going to give us the lightest rate setting. We're going to get our end links mounted in the center position here, and that way it gives us some flexibility, and we can decide if we want to adjust it a little lighter or a little stiffer. And once we have that done, we'll go ahead and get our airline run, and then we can get that mini compressor set up. We chose to mount our G2 Mini Compressor right here under the hood using a bracket that mounts off of our brake master cylinder. Now, of course, there are many different brackets available on the market that give you convenient mounting locations for air compressors, and the nice thing about the G2 Mini Compressor is that they give you a ton of wiring in their harness that's going to give you the most flexibility possible in deciding just where you want to mount your compressor and run your wiring. You get this long side harness that even features a D-pinned connector here. That's going to make it easier for you to run this through, say, a grommet in your firewall to the interior of your Jeep. Of course, you get the matching other side of that harness here that's going to plug in, and it's going to give you all the connections for your switches. And that's going to power your mini compressor as well as the Core DRS. And then you also have enough connectors on here to also power additional accessories down the road, say maybe a core locker in your front or rear axle. We went ahead and we got our airline ran. We got that plugged into the solenoid on the side of our compressor here. We also plugged it into the side of the motor down at the Core DRS. And then of course we made our wiring connections here at the compressor. And then because this Jeep already has an S-Pod switch control center mounted in it, if you have something like this, maybe a painless trail rocker or some other type of system, well, that can simplify your wiring job. We were able to simply cut a lot of this wiring harness off and run our wiring right to 2 empty switch locations we had on the S-Pod. Now, of course, with that being said, G2 does also give you these really nice switches here, of course, labeled for the air compressor and the Core DRS. But because we've already got rocker switches mounted inside the cab of our Jeep that came with the S-Pod, we can simply go ahead and remove these rocker covers and replace them on our existing switches inside. And we go ahead and get the forklift back in here and check out the results we get with the new Core DRS installed. With our G2 Core DRS installed here, guys, I am absolutely blown away with the results of this system. You may remember we did a few measurements early on before we started the install here with the stock sway bar and end links connected. And with that, we measured 26 3/4 inches to the bottom of our forklift forks here. Now, once we got the Core DRS installed, we did the same measurement with the sway bar still in the locked position, so it was simulating a factory-like ride condition. Well, we got the exact same measurement of 26 3/4 inches. Now, we also took a measurement with the sway bar end links disconnected on that factory sway bar, and that's where we saw that massive amount of flex with 38 inches to the bottom of our forks. Well, now that we have the system fully installed, once activated, meaning that that sway bar is unlocked and is now running on that lightweight torsion bar, well, we got the exact same measurement. Again, 38 inches to the bottom of our forks here. And remember, that's an on-demand system. So it means you're not going to be climbing out of your Jeep, crawling around underneath a muddy suspension here, pulling pins, disconnecting sway bar end links. You can simply reach up, activate 2 switches right from the comfort of your driver's seat to get the massive amount of flex, as you can see here, out of your front suspension. Now, of course, this Jeep is heavily modified, so you're not going to see this amount of travel out of a stock Jeep, but every Jeep, whether you are stock or modified, can benefit from the addition of the G2 Core DRS. Of course, one of the other nice features of this, because it's on demand, well, that means if you're out on the trails for the day and maybe you come to an easier section of trail, you want a little more stiffness in the body, well, you can simply deactivate that sway bar, returning it to a stock-like condition. Once you get back to a technical section of the trail, it's as easy as hitting that switch again and unlocking that sway bar, just as if you were crawling around underneath the Jeep, manually removing sway bar end links. That is a thing of the past. Now, if you guys want to get more information or purchase the Core DRS dual rate sway bar from G2 or the mini compressor for your Wrangler, of course, you can click on that info button, head over to quadratec.com. If you guys have comments or questions about any of the components here, you can leave those for us below or contact us directly at any of the options on the screen. And you want to make sure you hit that subscribe button so you're sure to catch all of our latest videos. Till next time, I'm Rob. I'll see you guys out on the trail.